Captain Eva Rostova knew the sound of quiet disrespect. It was not the loud, angry shouting you saw in movies. It was the sound of silence. It was the sound of her fellow pilots stopping their jokes when she walked into the ready room. It was the sound of Colonel Marcus Slade's coffee cup hitting his desk, just a little too hard, every time she gave a report. Here at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, the sun was hot, but the old boys' club was cold. Eva Carlson Reaper was the only female pilot in her A-10 Warthog squadron. She was small, with dark hair pulled back so tight it made her eyes look sharp. She was quiet, she was smart, and she was the best pilot they had. And they hated her for it. "Morning, Princess," Colonel Slade grunted as she entered the briefing room. He never used her Carlson. He only used Reaper when he was mocking her, saying she was as scary as a kitten. Slade was a big man with a thick mustache and a cigar jammed in his teeth, even indoors. He believed two things: that the A-10 was the greatest plane ever built, and that women had no business flying it. Eva said nothing, she just took her seat. Her face was calm, like a still lake, but underneath she was burning. She had worked twice as hard as any man there, she had scored top of her class, she had earned her wings, but to them she was just Princess. "All right, listen up," Slade barked, pointing to a large map on the screen. "We have a situation up in Sector 7. A forward observation post, call St. Angel, has gone dark." A photo appeared on the screen. It showed a small, concrete bunker on a high, rocky plateau. It looked lonely and impossible to reach. "Intel says the post was overrun about 6 hours ago," Slade continued. "The entire area is crawling with enemy forces, swarming with them. We have confirmed multiple surface-to-air missile sites. SAMs everywhere, it's a death trap." The other pilots shifted in their seats. A mission into a SAM trap was a one-way ticket. "This," Slade said, "is a simple recon mission, a look-see. We need eyes on the target to confirm all personnel are gone so we can officially mark them as lost." He looked around the room, his eyes skipping over the eager male pilots. His gaze landed, heavy and cold, right on Eva. "Captain Rostova, you're up." The room went completely silent. Eva felt every eye on her. This was not a mission. This was a setup. He was sending her into a place he knew she could not survive. The other pilots looked down. They knew it, too. This was Slade's way of getting rid of the princess who was staining his perfect all-male squadron. One pilot, a young man named Mickey, half raised his hand. "Sir, begging your pardon, but Sector 7, that's suicide. You're sending her in alone." Slade turned his head, slow and cold. "Are you questioning my orders, Captain?" Mickey's face turned red. "No, sir, but nothing," Slade snapped. "Captain Rostova is a qualified pilot. She can handle a simple look-see. Can't you, Princess?" Eva stood up. Her legs felt steady, even though her heart was pounding like a drum. She looked at the map, not at Slade. "What are the rules of engagement, sir?" Slade almost smiled. It was a terrible sight. "Simple, fly in, fly out, do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. This is recon only. You are not to fire a single shot. You are to confirm the post is lost and return to base. If you get into trouble, do not bother calling for help. No one is coming for you. It's too hot. Do you understand me?" This was the final insult. He was sending her in, but he was tying her hands. The A-10 Warthog was a tank killer. It was a flying gun. Its main weapon, the GAU-8 Avenger, was a 7-barrel cannon that fired 30mm rounds as big as milk bottles. It was built to protect soldiers on the ground. And Slade was ordering her to fly this beautiful, terrible beast and do nothing. "Yes, sir," Eva said. Her voice was clear without a tremor. "I understand." "Good," Slade said, turning away from her. "Dismissed." The other pilots filed out, not looking at her. They looked ashamed, but they said nothing. They were afraid of Slade. As Eva walked to the door, Slade's voice stopped her. "And Rostova," he said, not even turning around, "try not to scratch the paint on my plane." Eva walked out into the blinding Arizona sun. She walked past the line of A-10s parked like sleeping giants. She loved these planes. They were not fast, they were not pretty. They were tough, stubborn, and built to take a beating. They were built, she thought, a little like her. She got to her plane, Warthog 7-1. Her ground crew chief, a man named Sergeant Barnes, looked at her with worried eyes. He was one of the few who treated her with respect. "Captain," he said, keeping his voice low, "I saw the mission file. This is wrong. This ain't right." "Just get her ready, Sergeant," Eva said, pulling on her flight suit. "Make sure the gun is loaded, full load." Barnes' eyes went wide. "But," Colonel Slade's orders said. I know what the colonel said, Eva said, her voice hard. Load the gun, every last round, and load the rockets, all of them. Barnes stared at her for a long second. He saw the fire in her eyes. He saw the Reaper. He nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am, full load. As Eva did her pre-flight check, she paused. Tucked into a small pocket of her suit was a small, worn photograph. It was her father. He was a pilot, too, long ago. A hero she had always thought, but he had been kicked out of the Air Force, dishonorably discharged. The official report said he disobeyed a direct order, but he had told her the truth. His commander had ordered him to abandon a group of soldiers who were trapped. An acceptable loss, the commander called it. Her father refused. He went in anyway. He saved the men, but he lost his career. He died a few years later, a broken man, always called a coward and a traitor by the military he loved. Eva touched the photo. I'm not leaving them, Dad, she whispered. She climbed into the cockpit. She put on her helmet. As she closed the canopy, the world went quiet. It was just her and the plane. She taxied to the runway. Over the radio, she heard Slade's voice one last time, cold and final. Warthog 7-1, you are cleared for takeoff. Good luck, Captain, you'll need it. Eva pushed the throttle forward. The two big engines on her back screamed. The plane surged forward, heavy with fuel and weapons. It lifted into the blue desert sky. As she turned north, toward Sector 7, she did something Slade had not expected. She switched her radio to a secure, encrypted channel, the one only used for emergencies. She whispered into her mask. This is Captain Eva Rostova, Warthog 7-1, flying to Sector 7. This is an open call. If anyone from FOP Angel can hear me, light 'em up. I'm on my way. For a long time there was only static. Then so faint she almost missed it, a broken voice crackled back. Angel, we are still here, there, in the wire. Eva's blood ran cold. Slade had lied. The men were not gone. They were alive. And he had sent her in alone to confirm they were dead. He was not sending her on a recon mission. He was sending her to be a witness, or to be silenced. Hang on, Angel, Eva whispered, her hand tightening on the trigger. The Reaper is coming. Desert floor was a wrinkled, brown blanket a few thousand feet below. Eva's A-10, the Warthog, flew low and fast. Every few minutes her radar warning receiver would chirp. A chirp meant someone's radar was looking for her, but it hadn't locked on yet. The enemy was down there. They were hunting. Eva flew with her hands light on the control stick. She was not a princess. She was a hunter, and right now she felt like the bait. She thought about Colonel Slade back at the base, safe in his command center. He knew those men at FOP Angel were alive. He had to know. Why would he mark them as lost? Why would he send her on a mission with a do not engage order? It made no sense, unless he wanted them to die. The thought was so ugly, so dark that Eva pushed it away. She could not think about that now. She had to fly the plane. She remembered her father. She remembered the shame in his eyes when he talked about his discharge. Sometimes, Eva, he had told her, his voice rough. Sometimes doing the right thing looks like the wrong thing to everyone else. But you have to live with your choice. Don't you ever leave our boys behind. Not ever. He had been called a traitor for disobeying. And now, here she was, flying against a direct order from her colonel. Her hands were sweating inside her gloves. Warthog 7-1, this is Angel 1, the radio crackled. The voice was stronger now, but filled with panic. We are down to our last magazines. They are bringing in armor, heavy tanks. Eva's heart hammered. The A-10 was built to kill tanks. That's why they called it the Hog. It was a flying tank buster. Angel 1, this is Warthog 7-1. I am 10 minutes out, Eva said, her voice steady. How many are you? There was a pause filled with the sound of gunfire. There are 4 of us left, ma'am. Out of 12, we can't hold them. They're at the gate. 4 men. Slade was willing to sacrifice 4 American soldiers. Hold on, Angel, Eva said. I'm coming in, low and loud. Back at Davis-Monthan, the command center was quiet. Colonel Slade watched a single green dot on the radar screen. It was Eva's plane. It was now deep inside the red circle that marked the SAM trap. She's still going, Mickey, the young pilot, whispered to the man next to him. She should have turned back by now. She's a fool, the other pilot muttered. Slade told her to get out. Slade heard them. She's not a fool, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. She's arrogant, thinks she's better than us, thinks she's better than orders. He took a long, slow puff of his cigar. Well, she's about to learn a hard lesson. Just as he spoke, a new symbol flashed on the radar screen. A red triangle, then another, and another. "Sir," the radar tech yelled. "Multiple SAM launches. They're locking her. They've got her." On Eva's plane, the quiet chirp turned into a deafening, solid beep. The cockpit lit up with red warning lights. "Missile, missile, missile," the plane's automated voice screamed. Eva's training took over. She was not scared. She was angry. "You want me," she yelled at the empty sky. "Come and get me." She threw the A-10 into a hard right-hand turn, pulling the stick back. The plane climbed, groaning under the G-force. She was flying towards the missile. This was a trick her father had taught her. "Never run from a missile," he said. "Fly at it, make it confused, then brake." She saw it, a white smoke trail coming at her fast as a bullet. "Now," she yelled. She jammed the stick left and down, diving for the ground. At the same time, she hit a button on her dashboard. Flares, flares, flares. Behind the plane, dozens of bright, burning flares popped out, creating a massive cloud of heat. The missile, thinking the flares were her engines, got confused. It flew straight into the cloud of flares and exploded. Boom! The explosion was so close, it rocked Eva's plane like a toy. The Warthog shuddered violently. Alarms blared. She dodged it, the radar tech at the base said, his voice full of wonder. Slade's face was white. He slammed his fist on the table. "What is she doing?" Over the radio, he snarled. "Warthog 7-1, this is Colonel Slade. You are in direct violation of my order. You are to return to base immediately. That is a direct order, Captain." Eva was breathing hard. Her whole body was shaking from the explosion. She looked at her dashboard. The missile had been close, too close. Her left engine was running hot, but it was still running. She heard Slade's voice. She heard the threat. "Return to base or else." She looked ahead. Through the smoke, she could see the high plateau. Fop Angel, she could see tiny flashes of light, gunfire. She thought of her father. She thought of those 4 men alone about to die. She reached up and switched her radio. She turned off the channel to Slade. She left on the channel to Fop Angel. The command center at Davis-Monthan was filled with a new sound. Static. "Sir," the comms officer said, his voice trembling. She cut us off. She just hung up on us." Slade's face turned a dark, ugly red. That insolent rookie," he was shaking with rage. "She just signed her own death warrant and her discharge papers." The other pilots looked at each other. No one had ever done that. No one had ever hung up on a colonel in the middle of a combat zone. They thought she was just arrogant before. Now they thought she was crazy. "She's dead," one of them whispered. "She's dead." But in the cockpit of Warthog 7-1, Eva felt calm. The choice was made. Her father had lost his career for saving men. She would, too. It was worth it. She was 5 miles from the plateau. The sky in front of her was no longer empty. It was full of red and white smoke trails. It wasn't just a few SAM sites. It was an entire air defense network, dozens of them. They had been hiding, waiting. They had built a trap, and Slade had sent her right into the middle of it. This wasn't a setup to get her in trouble. This was a setup to have her killed. "Angel 1, this is Reaper," she said, using her call sign for the first time. Her voice was cold, hard, and steady. "I am inbound, and I am bringing hell with me." She pushed the throttle to its stop. The Warthog's 2 engines screamed as she dropped down, flying just 50 feet off the ground, weaving through the rocky canyons. The missiles couldn't see her down here. She was a Reaper flying in the shadows. "Hang on, boys," she whispered, her thumb moving to a small, red button on her control stick, the button that controlled the gun. "Mama's here." Master Sergeant Tom Grizz Miller was out of bullets. He was a big man with a gray beard and hands as tough as leather. He was the leader of Fop Angel, or what was left of it. He and his 3 men were backed into the small concrete bunker. The enemy was inside their wire. They had a heavy machine gun at the door, but it was down to its last belt of ammo. Outside, he could hear the heavy rumble and squeal of a T-72 tank positioning itself to blast their bunker to pieces. "This is it, boys," Grizz panted, pulling out his sidearm. "It's been an honor." The other 3 soldiers, all young, barely 20 years old, looked pale but determined. They checked their own pistols. "At least we took a few of them with us, Sarge," one of them, a kid named Specialist Diaz, said, trying to smile. "That we did, kid," Grizz said. Over his radio, he heard her voice. "Angel 1, this is Reaper. I am inbound, and I am bringing hell with me." Grizz almost laughed. "Reaper?" he said. We're the ones about to meet him. He'd heard a pilot was coming, but he figured they got shot down. One plane against an army? Impossible. Then he heard a new sound. It was not the sound of enemy jets. They were high-pitched and sleek. This was a low, angry growl, like a monster waking up. What in God's name? Diaz whispered. Grizz peeked through the firing slit in the bunker door. He saw the tank, not 500 yards away, turning its big cannon towards them. Get down, he yelled. But the tank never fired. From behind the ridge, Eva's A-10 Warthog burst into view. It was flying so low that Grizz could see the paint peeling on its belly. It was not fast, it was not graceful. It was terrifying. Eva saw the tank. She saw the dozens of enemy soldiers swarming the bunker. Her thumb pressed the red button. It was not a sound Grizz had ever heard. It was not a gunshot. It was not an explosion. It was like the sky itself was being torn in half by a giant, angry chainsaw. It was a sound that you felt in your bones, in your teeth. A stream of fire, thicker than a man's arm, erupted from the nose of the A-10. The 30mm depleted uranium rounds, firing at a rate of 65 per second, hit the ground. Dirt and rock exploded. The stream of fire walked its way from the enemy soldiers, across the dirt, and hit the T-72 tank. The tank did not just explode, it vanished. 1 second it was a 40-ton machine of steel. The next it was a cloud of black smoke and tiny, molten pieces. The turret flew 100 feet into the air. Eva pulled back on the stick, her body pressed into the seat. The plane climbed, and she rolled it over, looking back at the chaos she had created. Inside the bunker, the 4 soldiers were covered in dust. They looked at each other, their mouths open. Holy, Diaz whispered. That, Grizz said, a wild grin spreading across his face. That was a Warthog, a real angel. He grabbed the radio. Reaper, this is Angel 1, you tore him up, but they got more armor to the west. On it, Angel, Eva's calm voice came back. But as she turned, her warning system screamed again. Missile, missile, missile. A SAM missile, fired from a launcher she hadn't seen, was coming straight at her. She didn't have time to dive. She pulled the plane hard left and popped flares. The missile was too close. It ripped past her, exploding just behind her left engine. Boom! This time she was hit. The plane jumped and the whole left side of her cockpit went dark. Red lights flashed everywhere. Left engine, on fire, she yelled, though no one could hear her. Left engine out. The plane began to spin, falling out of the sky. Back at Davis Monthan, Eva's green dot on the radar screen vanished. Signal lost, the tech shouted. Sir, Warthog 7-1 is gone, she's down. Colonel Slade allowed himself a small, tight smile. He put his cigar back in his mouth. A tragedy, he said, his voice flat. She was a brave but foolish pilot, make a note of it. Captain Rostova killed in action, disobeying a direct order. Mickey, the young pilot, stared at the blank screen. He felt sick. But Eva was not dead, she was fighting. The A-10 was built to take a beating. It was, pilots said, a flying bathtub. The cockpit was surrounded by a tub of solid titanium armor. Eva was falling, but she was still flying. She fought the spin. She used her one good engine, the right one, to regain control. The fire in the left engine was still burning, trailing black smoke. She was just a few hundred feet from the ground when she pulled the plane level. She was alive. Reaper, Reaper, are you hit? Grizz was yelling into the radio. Talk to me. Eva coughed. The cockpit was filling with smoke. I'm hit, Angel. Left engine is gone, but I'm still in the fight. Grizz could not believe it. He looked out the slit. The A-10 was flying sideways like a wounded bird. Black smoke poured from its back, but it was still flying. Ma'am, you're on fire. Get out of here. Save yourself, Grizz yelled. Negative, Angel. Eva's voice was a snarl. I see the other tanks. I'm not leaving you. She pointed her wounded plane at the second tank. She couldn't climb, she couldn't turn well, she could only fly straight. She lined up her shot. Again, the sound of the gun tore the air. It destroyed the second tank. Rockets firing rockets, she yelled. She fired her rockets into the trucks full of enemy soldiers. Explosions bloomed all over the plateau. The enemy, who had been seconds from victory, was now broken. They were terrified of this smoking, burning demon that had come from the sky. They began to run. In less than 3 minutes, the battle was over. The enemy was in full retreat. There was silence. "My God," Diaz said from the bunker. She did it. She saved us." Grizz grabbed the radio. "Reaper, Captain, you did it. They're running. The battle is. It's over." On the radio, he heard Eva coughing. Good to hear, Angel. I'm losing her. The right engine is sputtering." "Get out, eject, Captain, eject," Grizz yelled. "Negative," Eva's voice was weak. My ejection seat is damaged. I can't eject." She looked at her controls. The plane was dying. She was losing altitude. She was going to crash. She looked at the plateau. It was flat, but it was short, not a runway. "Angel 1, Eva panted. I'm coming in. I'm going to try to land." Grizz's blood ran cold. "Land, Captain, there's no runway. It's just rock. You'll be killed." "It's my only chance," Eva whispered. "And I have an idea. Get your men ready." Grizz looked at his men. Then he looked at the smoking, broken A-10 as it turned slowly to line up with the plateau. What kind of idea?" Grizz asked. "I'm not leaving you," Eva's voice came back firm even as she was dying. "I promised. Now I need you to get some rope or some straps, anything you can find." "Straps for what?" "For you," Eva said as her wheels up, one-engine plane aimed for the rocky ground. "We're all going home." Back at Davis Monthan, the mood was dark. The ready room was silent. Captain Eva Rostova, Princess Reaper, was gone. Her name was already being wiped from the duty roster. Colonel Slade was in his office filing the after-action report. He listed the mission as a total loss. He wrote that Captain Rostova had acted with reckless arrogance and disobeyed a direct order, leading to the loss of a valuable aircraft. He was closing the book on her. He was also closing the book on Fop Angel. He marked the 4 remaining soldiers as killed in action. It was clean. It was simple. He had gotten rid of his problem pilot, and he had silenced the witnesses. Mickey, the young pilot who had spoken up for Eva, sat in the corner. He felt a heavy, cold guilt. He should have said more. He should have done something. Now it was too late. But 100 miles away, Eva was not dead. She was fighting for every inch of air. Her A-10 was a wreck. The fire in the left engine had burned itself out, leaving a black, gaping hole. The right engine was coughing, sputtering, and threatening to die. Her landing gear was gone, destroyed by the missile. She was going to have to belly land the plane. "Angel 1, this is Reaper," she said into her radio. Her voice was strained. She was using all her strength to keep the heavy plane level. "I am on final approach. This is going to be rough. Pop smoke. I need to see the wind." On the plateau, Grizz and his 3 men ran out of the bunker. Grizz threw a green smoke grenade. The smoke billowed sideways, showing a strong crosswind. This was going to make it even harder. "I see the smoke," Eva said. "Here I come." Grizz and his men watched, their hearts in their throats. The Warthog, a plane that weighed 25,000 pounds, was coming in with no wheels on one bad engine. "It's too fast," Diaz yelled. "She's coming in too fast." "She has to," Grizz shouted back. "Any slower and she'll fall out of the sky. Get back, get back." The plane hit the rocky ground. The sound was the most terrible thing Grizz had ever heard. It was the sound of a mountain of metal screaming as it tore itself apart. The A-10's tough titanium belly scraped the rock, sending up a shower of sparks 50 feet high. The plane slid, spinning sideways, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and rocks. It slid for 1,000 feet, screeching, groaning, until it finally, slammed to a stop. It was perched just 20 yards from the edge of a deep canyon. For a long, terrible second, there was only silence. The dust began to settle. The plane was in one piece, barely. "Captain," Grizz whispered into his radio. "Reaper, Eva, talk to me." "Static." "She's dead," one of the young soldiers said, his voice breaking. "She saved us, and she's dead." "No," Grizz said. "No, let's go." The 4 men ran to the smoking, broken aircraft. The right engine gave one last cough and died. The plane was silent. They reached the cockpit. The canopy was cracked, but it was still closed. Inside, they could see Eva. She was slumped over the control stick, not moving. "The canopy is jammed," Diaz yelled. "Get the crowbar from the bunker." They smashed the glass and pried the canopy open. Grizz reached in and touched Eva's neck. He felt a pulse. It was weak, but it was there. "She's alive." He gently unstrapped her and with the help of the other men lifted her out. Her flight suit was torn. Her left arm was bent at a wrong angle. It was broken. As they laid her on the ground, she moaned. Her eyes fluttered open. She saw Grizz's face. Did it work?" she whispered. "You're alive, Captain," Grizz said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it. You landed a plane with no wheels and one engine on a pile of rocks. You're a miracle." Eva tried to sit up, wincing in pain. No time," she panted. "Heard on the radio before I shut it off. Enemy regrouping. They'll be back with more." Grizz looked at her. "Captain, we're on a plateau. There's no way out. The main force is 100 miles away. We're trapped. You saved us, but we're still trapped." Eva looked at her broken plane. Then she looked at the hardpoints under the wings. These were the pylons, the heavy-duty racks used to hold 500-pound bombs and rocket pods. "No," Eva said, a strange, fierce light in her eyes. "We're not trapped." She pointed at her plane. She has one more flight in her." Grizz looked at the A-10. It was a wreck. "Captain, that thing is never flying again. It's done." The right engine," Eva said, pushing herself up with her good arm. It sputtered, but it didn't die. I think the fuel line is just shaken, not broken. I think I can restart it." "Restart it for what?" Diaz asked. Eva pointed at the wings. "For them, the hardpoints, you're going to strap yourselves to the wings." The 4 soldiers stared at her. They thought she was crazy, delirious from the crash. "Captain," Grizz said gently, "you want us to ride on the outside of the plane like a bomb." "It's the only way," Eva said, her voice getting stronger. "Those hardpoints are rated for thousands of pounds. They can hold you. We'll use cargo straps, belts, anything from the bunker." That's insane," Diaz said. "The wind, the G-force, it will rip us right off." "It's a chance," Eva snapped, her Reaper persona coming back. "Staying here is certain death. The enemy will be here in an hour. They will not be happy. This is our only chance. It's 100 miles. If I fly low and slow, you can make it." The 4 men looked at each other. They heard the faint, distant rumble of trucks. The enemy, they were coming back. Grizz looked at Eva. This small, quiet woman, broken and bleeding, was the toughest soldier he had ever met. He nodded. "All right," he said. "We're with you, Captain. Let's do it." For the next 20 minutes, they worked with a desperate, frantic energy. They found cargo straps and parachute cord in the bunker. They tied themselves, 2 men to each wing, to the heavy bomb racks. They looked like statues, like strange angels lashed to the wings of a broken beast. Grizz was the last one. He tied himself to the pylon closest to the cockpit. "We're set, Captain." Eva, using her one good arm, had crawled back into the shattered cockpit. She found a medical kit and injected her broken arm with a heavy dose of painkiller. She would deal with the pain later. She flipped switches. She prayed. "Come on, baby, come on, start for me." She hit the ignition for the right engine. It sputtered, it coughed, it whined. "Come on," she screamed. Then, with a sound like a small explosion, the engine roared to life. It was rough, it was shaky, but it was running. "It's on," she yelled. "We're ready," Grizz shouted back, his voice muffled by the wind. Eva looked at the plateau. It was too short. She had barely landed, taking off. Overloaded with 4 men, it was impossible. But she had to. "Hold on, boys," she yelled. "This is it." She pushed the throttle of the one good engine all the way forward. The plane began to shake and vibrate. It started to move, slowly, too slowly. "It's not fast enough," Diaz yelled from the other wing. "She's not gonna make it." The plane was moving faster, 40 miles an hour, 50, 60, but the end of the plateau was coming up, fast. "We're running out of room," Grizz yelled. Eva knew, her good hand was white on the control stick. Not enough speed. The front of the plane hit the end of the plateau. It ran out of rock. The A-10, overloaded, broken, with 4 men strapped to its wings, fell. It dropped like a stone straight down into the dark 1,000-foot canyon. The Warthog fell. For one heart-stopping second, they were just falling. Sergeant Grizz Miller, strapped to the wing, closed his eyes. He was sure he was about to die. But Eva was a pilot. She had planned for this. "Airspeed," she yelled to herself. "Give me airspeed." As the plane fell into the canyon, the wind screamed over its wings. It was a gravity-assisted takeoff. The fall made them go faster. 100 miles an hour. 120, 130. "That's it," Eva shouted. She pulled back on the control stick with all her strength, her broken arm screaming in pain, even with the medicine. The plane shuddered. The one good engine roared in protest. The plane's nose, which had been pointing at the canyon floor, began to lift. Slowly, painfully, the A-10 stopped falling. It leveled out. It was flying. It was flying just 100 feet above the canyon floor, weaving between the rock walls. It was slow. It was loud. It was the ugliest, most beautiful sight in the world. Grizz opened his eyes. He was flying. He was strapped to the wing of a broken airplane, but he was flying. He looked over at the other wing. Diaz and the other 2 soldiers were there, alive, their eyes wide with terror and wonder. They looked like angels, riding on the wings of a demon. She did it, Grizz whispered into the wind. She's flying. Back at Davis Monthan, the sun was setting. The sky was turning a deep blood orange. Colonel Slade was just leaving his office, his day's work done. He was heading for a steak and a glass of whiskey. In the radar tower, a young tech was getting ready to go off shift. He was staring at the screen, bored. Suddenly, a single dot painted on the radar. "Oh," he said, "that's weird." "What is it?" his supervisor asked. "A bogey south. It's not on any flight plan, no transponder." The supervisor looked. It's moving at only 140 knots. That's a prop plane or a helicopter, and it's flying below the legal altitude. Call the tower, tell them to warn him off. He's approaching our airspace." The tower operator got on the radio. "Unidentified aircraft, you are approaching Davis Monthan airspace. You are not cleared. Identify yourself or you will be met with force." There was no answer, just static. "Sir," the radar tech said, his voice getting nervous. It's not turning. It's on a direct path for the main runway." Slade's radio crackled in his car. He heard the tower's panicked calls. He looked up. "Sir," the radar tech yelled, "it's on final approach. My God, it's a warthog." The base sirens began to wail, not an attack siren, a crash siren. "All personnel clear the runway, emergency crews to the runway now." Everyone ran outside. Slade's car screeched to a halt. He got out and looked at the sky. The other pilots, Mickey among them, ran from the ready room. And they saw it. It came out of the sunset, black against the orange sky. It was a ghost, a nightmare. It was an A-10 missing its left engine, trailing smoke. Its landing gear was gone. It was riddled with bullet holes. And there were men strapped to its wings. My God," Mickey whispered. The other pilots were frozen, their jokes, their insults, their scorn. It all died in their throats. They were watching the impossible. Slade's face was not red. It was a pasty, sickly white. His cigar fell from his open mouth. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be." Eva lined up the broken plane with the runway. "Brace for impact, boys," she yelled, though she knew they could not hear her. She cut the one good engine. The plane hit the runway in a deafening, terrifying scream of metal on concrete. The titanium tub that had saved her on the plateau saved her again. The plane slid for 2,000 feet, a comet of sparks, before finally spinning to a stop. Silence. Then the fire trucks were there, spraying foam. The base commander, a 3-star general, was there, and Colonel Slade was there, his face a mask of horror. The fire crews ran to the wings. They began cutting the 4 soldiers free. The soldiers were frozen, battered, and in shock. But they were alive. As soon as his feet touched the ground, Grizz Miller fell to his knees and kissed the concrete. Other crews raced to the cockpit. They pried it open. They gently lifted Captain Eva Rostova from her seat. She was conscious. Her face was black with soot. Her arm was broken, but she was standing. She ignored the medics. She ignored the general. She saw Colonel Slade, and she began to walk towards him. Every pilot, every crew chief, every airman on that runway watched her. "Captain," Slade stammered, you're alive." "No thanks to you," Eva said, her voice a low, gravelly rasp. You disobeyed a direct order," Slade shouted, trying to sound strong. You are in treason." "No, sir," a new voice said. Sergeant Grizz Miller, helped by Diaz, walked up. He was holding something, a small, hardened laptop pulled from his gear. "But you are," Grizz said, his voice shaking with cold rage. "What is the meaning of this, Sergeant?" the general demanded. "General, sir," Grizz said, standing as tall as he could. "FOP Angel wasn't just an observation post. We were an intelligence unit. We were listening." He held up the laptop. "We recorded this, sir, 3 days ago. It's It's Colonel Slade. He was on a satellite phone, talking to the enemy commander. Slade lunged for the laptop. That's a lie. Two air police officers grabbed him. He was selling them our intel, sir, Grizz said, his voice breaking. He sold them the location of our post. He sold them the flight plans. He told them that a single unarmed was coming. He set us up. He set her up. He wanted us all dead. The general looked at the laptop. He looked at Slade. Slade was not speaking. He was just shaking. It was true. Slade had been selling secrets. Fop Angel had accidentally recorded him. He had to silence them. He sent Eva, a pilot he hated and thought was weak, on a recon mission. He knew she would be shot down. He would get rid of the pilot he hated and the witnesses all at once. He just never, ever counted on her being the Reaper. Colonel Slade, the general's voice was low and deadly. You are under arrest for treason. As the police cuffed him, Slade looked at Eva. His face was no longer angry. It was just pathetic. Eva watched him be taken away. Then she looked at her fellow pilots. They were standing in a line. Mickey stepped forward. His face was pale. He looked her in the eye. He raised his hand in a salute. Welcome home, Reaper, he said. One by one, the other pilots, the ones who had mocked her, the ones who had called her princess, saluted. It was a long, silent, perfect salute. Eva was in pain. She was tired. She was broken, but she stood straight. She thought of her father. She had not only saved 4 men. She had saved her father's honor. She had proven that a pilot's first duty is to the soldiers on the ground. She lifted her one good arm, and she returned the salute. Her eyes went to her warthog. It was ruined. It would never fly again, but it had brought them all home. It had returned, with angels on its wings.